It was 6:47 in the morning when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost didn't pick it up. I'd worked a double shift the day before. 12 hours on my feet at the clinic, then 3 more hours finishing patient notes at home. And I had maybe 5 hours of sleep in me when that notification lit up the screen. A motion alert from the Ring camera my husband had installed over our front door last October. I tapped it without thinking. The footage was grainy in that early morning way. The sky still that flat gray before sunrise. And there on my porch, sitting on a single rolling suitcase, with a plastic grocery bag on her lap, was my grandmother. She was 81 years old. She was in a thin cardigan. It was 34 degrees. I didn't even put on shoes. I grabbed my robe off the hook by the door and ran outside barefoot, and the cold hit me like a wall, and I thought, she's been out here how long? Grandma. I got down on my knees in front of her. Her hands were in her lap, and they were ice cold when I took them in mine. How long have you been sitting here? She looked up at me, and her eyes did that thing they do sometimes, that small delay before recognition settles in. Then she smiled. Just this soft, embarrassed little smile. I didn't want to ring the bell too early, she said. I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to be a bother. I have thought about those words every single day since. I got her inside. I wrapped her in the blanket from the couch and put the kettle on and turned the heat up, and the whole time I was doing all of this, I was asking her questions. And she was answering in this calm, matter-of-fact way that made the whole thing feel even more surreal. Yes, her son, my uncle, had dropped her off. No, he hadn't come to the door. Yes, she had her purse. No, she didn't know exactly when he had left. I went back and pulled up the full camera footage while the tea was steeping. His truck had pulled up at 6:31 a.m. He'd opened the passenger door, helped her out, put the suitcase on the porch, set the grocery bag next to it. And then he had gotten back in the truck and driven away without looking back. Without knocking. Without waiting to see if anyone was even home. She had been sitting on that porch for 16 minutes before I saw the alert. I saved the footage immediately. I don't know exactly what made me do it. Some instinct. Some quiet voice in the back of my head that said you're going to need this. But I did. I saved it. I backed it up. And then I sat down next to my grandmother on the couch and I asked her to tell me everything. Here's what I need you to understand about my grandmother. Her name is Eleanor. No, wait, I'm going to call her Grandma Bet, because that's what I called her growing up. Grandma Bet. Short for Bernadette, except the name file. Okay. Her name is Vivian. Grandma Viv. That's what we've always called her. Grandma Viv raised 4 kids in a 3-bedroom house in suburban Ohio. She worked as a bookkeeper for 23 years. She is sharp. She does the crossword puzzle every morning in pen. She still drives herself to the grocery store. She taught me how to make pie crust from scratch when I was 7 years old. And she has never once in her life asked anyone for a single thing she didn't absolutely need. So when she sat there on my couch at 6 in the morning and told me in this quiet, dignified voice that my uncle had decided she was too much to manage, I felt something go very still inside me. My uncle, I'll call him by what he is, which is my mother's younger brother, had been Grandma Viv's primary caregiver for the past 2 years, or so we all believed. After my grandfather passed in 2022, the family had agreed that Grandma Viv would move in with him and his wife, because they had the most space, and he had positioned himself, loudly and repeatedly, as the one most willing to step up. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was what had been happening inside that house. Over the next hour, in small, careful pieces, Grandma Viv told me. She had not been allowed to have her own phone plan. She had not been allowed to drive her own car. Her car, the 2019 Camry she had paid cash for. Because my uncle's wife had decided it was a liability. She had not been given access to her own checking account in over 8 months. When she needed something, a prescription, a new pair of shoes, anything, she had to ask. She had to justify it. She had to wait. Her Social Security check, $1,940 a month, was being deposited directly into a joint account that my uncle had set up for convenience 2 months after she moved in. She had not seen a single statement. I kept my face very calm. I had learned this at work. This skill of keeping your face calm while your insides are doing something entirely different. Grandma, I said, do you know roughly how much money you had in savings before you moved in with him? She thought about it. Around $60,000, she said. Maybe a little more. Your grandfather and I had been saving since 1987. I nodded. I poured her more tea. After she fell asleep on the pullout in my office, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, and I started making a list of everything she had told me. Times, dates, amounts, details. I had a legal pad and I wrote it all down in my own handwriting too, because I am someone who keeps records. My husband says I was born a paper trail. Then I called my mother. My mother and my uncle have always had what I would generously describe as a complicated relationship. She is the older sibling. She left Ohio at 22 and never moved back. There is his history there that I don't fully know and probably never will, but when I told her what I had found, Grandma Viv on my porch at 34 degrees, the camera footage, the financial accounts, all of it. My mother went completely silent for a long moment. Then she said, I'm getting on a flight. She was at my house by 9 o'clock that night. We sat at the kitchen table after Grandma Viv had gone to sleep, and my mother looked at the legal pad and the printed out camera footage timestamps. And she said, very quietly, we need a lawyer. I had already looked one up. The next morning I called an elder law attorney. I found her through the Ohio State Bar's referral service, which has a specific category for elder financial abuse. Juxt. I didn't even know that category existed until I searched for it, and the fact that it exists tells you something about how common this is. Her name was Ms. Kellerman. She had a calm, efficient voice, and she asked me very specific questions. Account numbers, dates, the nature of the joint account, whether my grandmother had signed a power of attorney, and if so, when and under what circumstances. And at the end she said, based on what you're describing, this may qualify as elder financial exploitation under Ohio Revised Code 2913 Pi 02. I'd like to see the camera footage and any financial documentation you can obtain. That same afternoon, I drove Grandma Viv to her bank. This part I want to be very clear about. Because some people in situations like this make the mistake of not having the person themselves present. Grandma Viv walked into that bank on her own 2 feet, sat down across from the branch manager, and asked, in her calm, bookkeeper's voice, to see a full statement on every account associated with her Social Security number. The branch manager pulled it up, and then she printed it out and slid it across the desk, and I watched my grandmother's face as she read it. The savings account, the one with $60,000, the one she and my grandfather had been building since 1987, had a current balance of $4,211. There were 34 months of Social Security deposits, all direct deposited into the joint account. There were withdrawals. Steady, regular withdrawals. Some with a debit card. Some as transfers. One in particular, for $12,000, marked simply as home improvement, to an account that did not belong to my grandmother. She didn't cry. That's the thing about Grandma Viv. She sat up a little straighter, and she looked at those numbers. And she said, "I would like a copy of everything, please." The branch manager printed 2 copies. We drove straight to Ms. Kellerman's office. What happened over the next 10 days moved faster than I expected, and also slower, the way things do when you're in the middle of them. Ms. Kellerman filed for emergency guardianship on Grandma Viv's behalf. Not because Grandma Viv was incapable of making her own decisions, but because she needed legal protection while the financial examination was underway. Adult Protective Services was contacted. A detective from the county sheriff's financial crimes unit was contacted. I submitted the Ring camera footage with timestamps. I submitted every note from my legal pad. My uncle called me on day 3. I didn't pick up, I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was, I'll be honest, exactly what I expected. He said that Grandma Viv was confused, that she had agreed to all of this, that the money had gone toward household expenses and her care, that I was tearing the family apart, that I was going to regret this. And then, at the very end, almost as an afterthought, that he hoped I knew what I was doing. I saved the voicemail. I forwarded it to Ms. Kellerman. On day 5, my uncle and his wife showed up at my house. It was just after 7 in the evening. I know this because I was washing dishes, and I heard the doorbell, and then I heard it again before I could even get to the door, and then again, and my husband came downstairs and looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "Don't open it." They rang the bell 8 times. My uncle knocked. Hard, not politely, and called my name and then called my mother's name, because she was still staying with us. My grandmother was upstairs. She could hear it. She came to the top of the stairs and looked down at me. I said, quietly, "You don't have to do anything. I've got it." I did not open the door. I walked to the front window and I made sure they could see me through the glass, and I held up my phone to show them I was recording. They stood on my porch for another 4 minutes, my uncle talking, his wife, with her arms crossed, then they left. I have footage of that too. My uncle called again the next morning, this time from his wife's number, which told me he knew I had blocked his. He left another voicemail. This one was more specific. He mentioned the inheritance. He mentioned that Grandma Viv had always planned to leave the house, my grandfather's house, the house she owned outright, to him, and that I was interfering with a family agreement. He mentioned 3 times that this was between him and his mother and it had nothing to do with me. I have to tell you something. Up until that moment, there was a part of me, a small, tired, conflicted, avoidant part of me, that had been holding on to the idea that maybe there was an explanation. That maybe the money had genuinely gone toward her care. That maybe this was a misunderstanding. That voicemail ended it. He wasn't worried about Grandma Viv. He was worried about the house. I forwarded that voicemail to Ms. Kellerman as well. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for day 11. I took the day off work. My mother came. Grandma Viv wore her good blue cardigan and her pearl earrings, and she answered every question. The judge asked her in a clear, steady voice. My uncle had hired a lawyer. His lawyer argued that Grandma Viv had willingly consented to the joint financial arrangements, that the withdrawals were for her care, that I had manipulated an elderly woman in a moment of confusion. Ms. Kellerman submitted the bank statements. She submitted the camera footage. She submitted the Adult Protective Services intake report. She submitted both voicemails. The judge awarded temporary guardianship to my mother. My uncle's face when he heard the ruling. I won't describe it. I'll just say that I have thought about it and I have tried to feel something other than cold relief, and mostly I have not succeeded. That was 4 months ago. Here is where things stand. The financial crimes detective completed his review. The county prosecutor has filed charges against my uncle for theft from an elderly person under Ohio law. A felony. If convicted, his wife has been named as a person of interest in connections with several of the transfers. The total amount identified as improperly withdrawn is $58,400, which includes 34 months of Social Security deposits that should have been accessible to my grandmother and were not. Grandma Viv is living in my house. She has her own room now. We cleared out what was my home office, and she has her own phone and her own bank account, and every Monday morning, she does the crossword puzzle at my kitchen table in pen while I make coffee. She has started doing a water aerobics class on Thursdays at the Y. She has a standing appointment with a geriatric care coordinator who helped us set up a plan for the next few years that she was actually involved in creating, that she had actual opinions about. That reflects what she actually wants. She asked me, a few weeks after all of this began, why I had saved that camera footage so quickly. You didn't even know yet, she said. You didn't know what he'd done. But you saved it right away. I told her the truth. I didn't know. I just had a feeling. She nodded like that made complete sense to her. What I know now that I didn't know at the start of all of this. Elder financial abuse is the fastest growing form of elder abuse in the United States. Most victims know their abuser. Most cases go unreported because the victim is afraid of losing family, afraid of not being believed, afraid of being seen as confused or difficult. 1 in 10 Americans over the age of 60 will experience some form of elder abuse. The number is almost certainly higher than that, because so many cases never get counted. If you are watching this and something about what I've described sounds familiar, someone you know, something that doesn't add up, an elderly person who seems isolated or who has stopped being able to access their own money, please call Adult Protective Services. Call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1166. Call a lawyer who specializes in elder law. Call the police if you have to. My grandmother sat outside in 34-degree weather because she didn't want to be a bother. She has spent her entire life not wanting to be a bother. I will spend the rest of mine making sure she knows she never has to feel that way again.